of nature. We always talk about how one kernel of corn will grow a stalk with 500 kernels, maybe two with 1,000 kernels. Put those around, and it's exponential. And if you have the fuel and the technology to transport that, and things of that nature, we would have incredible time to play, to be creative. We would not be in base survival and have to deal with having our nose to the grindstone and evolve and awaken very quick. But a lot of people don't even know that's an option.
Yeah, it doesn't occur to people that this isn't the way it's meant to be, and that what is the normal human path, I would suggest from my studies, you have to go rather a long way back to see this in action, and none of it's in the official historical record. It's all so-called esoteric information now, unfortunately, but that will change in time. Pioneering revisionist historians or alternative historians, whatever you want to call it, they're the only people who are uncovering interesting human cultures where it wasn't about war and resource management and fear mentality and conflict and all that kind of stuff. There are examples where that wasn't the case, but as I say, it's not in the mainstream historical record, because if it was, then people would cotton on to the fact rather quickly that everything we've seen about these empires dominating each other is all a bit of a charade, really. So I completely agree with you that if you contemplate the idea that you had a technology that provided you with all the power and physical resources you need, like a little free energy device the size of a sort of old video cassette box, and you pop that on the side of the wall, and all your heat and air conditioning and light and power and so on of the house that's it, free forever. That's all taken care of. And all the proper desalination technology for turning, this ocean planet that we live on into drinking water is all freely available and, hugely advanced. Everything that you need is there. Then what would people do? What would you choose to do? Because you wouldn't need to work to pay for what is freely available. So you would choose to do something meaningful, and you would choose to do something of substance, and you would choose to do something that was inherently spiritually aligned with your own trajectory of growth and of fulfillment and of creative play and of community service and of service to others. And as most people who ever get involved with that, the most rewarding things one can do is where you're serving others. And it's a very simple thing, and anyone who's ever done sort of voluntary work or community work will see that, in that there is something inherently rewarding about that. And it's so opposed to the the dominant paradigm of greed-based gangster capitalism that we forget that, and we only see it in the sort of little microcosms of little communities and conferences and workshops and so on. But I would suggest that is the normal way, and that is the way that everybody kind of likes it, really, because it's safe. It makes crime disappear entirely because there's no requirement, because there's no desperation, there's no disturbance, there's no pain, and that without those things there is no crime. So all of the unpleasantness of society disappears, and because everybody is working in a sort of self-sustaining way, because there's no corporations, the population begins to slowly correct itself, because the survivalist mentality of breeding changes, and people do it in a more conscientious and different way. So if you're purely looking at this from a resource management point of view, the technology clues that there are other ways of doing things, and it doesn't come from the massive military industrial complex. It can come from some guy in Utah or some guy in Ohio who's got something in his in his backyard that he's been making. These things are starting to pop up everywhere now, and I've spoken to lots of people, and again, just from what you told me, you're just another one on that list, I'm glad to say, where that these technologies are not really suppressible anymore, because people are figuring out that they are a sort of birthright really to the planet, and tapping into whatever it is, the 0 point field, the quantum vacuum, using solar energy in a more innovative way than the corporations have been suggesting it's meant to be used. These things radically transform the power base of how things are used. So once those resources are taken care of, let's just imagine that's in motion. Let's be optimistic about that. It may be a little longer than most of us would like it, but that is on its way. When that's taken care of, people then face the question of what do you want to do? And that isn't a question that anyone else can answer for you. So it's nothing to do with universities or colleges or businesses. It's nothing to do with commerce whatsoever. It's to do with one's own spiritual journey. And that's the thing that you can only answer for yourself. So that decision to walk a spiritual path, which really, if you don't like that word, anybody, swap it with authentic or true, whatever it is you want to call that, it doesn't really matter. But that sincere way of living and being and conducting yourself with your own self and with those around you, when you do that in a sincere manner, then the universe supports you in that endeavor, and all these little synchronicities unfold, and these serendipitous meetings with other people present themselves in one's life, and resources tend to then come just in the nick of time to support these endeavors. And the whole thing is like a sort of very positive reciprocal feedback system, isn't it? And I'm sure you see that all the time, James.
Oh, definitely. I was privy to some information from some of the star nations and how their cultures operate. And it's completely different than what we do here. And what they do is they choose their leaders on their spiritual adeptness and their track record of service, that they've had in the past. And so,
wouldn't that be nice to have here? Goodness me.
Yeah, exactly. They're highly evolved, and they take their children at a certain age, and they take them up on their ships, and they power up the ship, and they put them in a state of consciousness that's like a near-death experience. They actually turn into a light being, and that's how they fly their ships. Their ships aren't flown as physical craft, but as a light being or pure consciousness. And then they bring them back, so they have this total unity consciousness, one with everyone. And they're spiritually adept enough to know what their own unique purpose is, what they need to do for completion in their soul or their own soul evolution. And they provide them with all the means that they need to excel to their highest potential, and then they give back to the whole. So
yes.
So that way of life allowed them to evolve and just take this huge quantum leap in evolution and consciousness. And it seems like where we're at now with our present society, we do everything exactly the opposite.
I know. I know, it's so, I mean, it's crazy, it's funny, it's absurd, it's horrible, all those things all at the same time, isn't it?
Yeah, it seems when you awaken, that's what I was telling somebody. I've been watching, all these things go on, with the birth certificate and the wars and the hidden agendas and everything else. And I was telling everybody, I said, this is getting to me to look like a really bad B movie. And it's like, it's so obvious and so I call it sheepidity. It's the ultimate sheepidity. And it's just like when you're looking at it from the outside, and I think that's what we all need to do is just stop, like you're saying, take a break and take a good hard look with brutal honesty at what we're doing and what we're involving ourselves in, and how that may serve humanity or disserve humanity in the earth, and just start making better choices. And I think this planet would turn around in a heartbeat.
I think it would, and in direct acknowledgement of what you just said, I was having a conversation with somebody just yesterday, and they were kind of suggesting that one of the useful things to do with all the kind of spiritual philosophies and systems and technologies and all the complex themes that present themselves in our world today, particularly if you're